July 17th. And we're seeing how Bitcoin has taken its last push before heading into the zone we predicted for next week, which is the area between $64,000 and $68,000. As you can see, it had a drop overnight to gain momentum, and that's what we're seeing now. Now it's in an accumulation phase, meaning it's gathering even more liquidity and will gradually push the price up. Be careful because the weekend is coming. Today is Friday. I'm recording this video at 11 in the morning, and when Friday afternoon arrives, the price slows down. You can see, that there are basically two markets within Bitcoin. One that operates during the week from Sunday night until Friday afternoon, and it behaves in a way that's more or less predictable with our system. Then there's another market, which is also predictable, but it works a bit differently, which is from Friday afternoon to Sunday night, when the liquidity in the Bitcoin market is lower. So any position taken by a fund or a whale can move the price in an exaggerated way and without following any strategy. I'm Mikel Vazquez, and after 15 years in professional trading, I would tell you that the only way to win sustainably in trading, and that's to look for what the institutions are doing. In other words, those who move the market. There are whales, institutions, or big holders, let's put it that way, of Bitcoin in this case, but it works in any market, who move the price, who move the indicators however they want. What they can't do is manipulate the volume. We, through volume, start looking for those clues and determine exactly what the price of Bitcoin is going to do. Yesterday, we already saw that it was about to start. We do the analysis for a few days, a week, something like that. We've set the price in this upper part of the channel between 64 and 68, pointing out that it could drop a bit to the 62 area to gain some momentum. That's exactly what we're seeing today, and already heading into the weekend. Without further ado, let's look for those clues from the institutions. The first thing we always do is set up support and resistance levels. That is, support below at the 60 zone, resistance above, the 68 zone in the middle of the channel. Not support and resistance exactly, but rather an area where when the price gets there, sometimes there's a certain amount of activity. Sometimes it's used as support, other times as resistance, but in any case, it's always about the volume from the big players. It shows up quite a bit in these three areas. These are the ones we need to watch very closely to determine our strategies. At the end of the video, I'll tell you how the July challenge I'm doing on mex.com is going. Also, I wanted to tell you that mext.com currently has a very interesting campaign for countries like, for example, Venezuela, where they use peer-to-peer or P2P. That means you can buy USDT, dollars, even when the government restricts access to them. It's a really, really interesting way to carry out your transactions. Even in these countries, I'll leave the link in the description. Plus, with your first deposit, you get a $10 reward. Without further ado, let's continue with the analysis. Let's take a look at the Wyckoff zones like we always do. You already know that Wyckoff zones are accumulation, distribution, markup, and markdown, which we see in all time frames. Right now, we're on the 4-hour chart. You see, for example, distribution, markdown, accumulation, markup, distribution, markdown. We always look at it. What we do is look for those zones over a long period. What we do is set each candle to represent a week, and we look for those zones. We're in an accumulation zone. An accumulation zone, distribution, second distribution, distribution, accumulation, distribution. We always find these zones on every chart and every market. We look at which phase we're in over the long term because it helps us understand any position we take in the short term, or on the weekly chart, which is the one we're currently studying. We switch to the 4-hour chart to see that movement I mentioned, and we're seeing that pause, looking to catch a bit of a breather, to move up to that mid-channel zone around 64. Let's see if today, Friday, the price ends up at 64, because the most likely scenario is that it stays there over the weekend. Very much in a range, meaning an accumulation or distribution zone that could keep it in this area of momentum, or if not, at the 64 zone, and then next week try for more. 64 to 68, unless we see a big surge in volume and it drops to a lower area, meaning a lower support level. It doesn't have to go down to the 60,000 support, which we can consider as the absolute support, since there are other supports before that. For example, the 61,600 area has been a very important support over the past week. There are supports that show up, supports and resistances that only appear on certain time frames. We don't take them into account on the daily or 4-hour charts, but we do, for example, on the 15-minute or 30-minute charts for scalping or intraday trading. All right, we have that forecast set, but let's always check how the volume comes in, since it's the only element on the chart that can't be manipulated by the big players. We're seeing these spikes. If you've watched my other videos, I always tell you that when something looks very orderly on the chart, it's not a coincidence. It's because the big players are making it happen that way. We're seeing above 1.5. The big players always show up. We were seeing that it wasn't that they didn't have much presence during this time. The big players, and now they've started to show up when the price went above 64,000. In other words, they're manipulating here. They did it to push the price into the upper half of the channel, above 64, and then they've shown up several times since. Now they'll try to bring the price back to 64 for the weekend. With that in mind, in the long term, we have that accumulation zone in week of. On the weekly chart, which we can consider short term, we already have that forecast in the upper part of the channel, unless significant volume appears. And then for intraday or scalping, what we look at is the shape of the candles along with the volume. We're looking at both 15 and 30 minutes, even hourly, but mainly 15 to 30 minutes. It seems like they are the most recommended charts for entering intraday and scalping, without a doubt, are the ones that give the strongest or most accurate signals, at least from my point of view. Because with others, there's a lot of noise. We're seeing those signals appear together. More volume coming in, wicks appearing at the lower area, and reaching a zone that we can consider support, but only on the 15-minute or 30-minute chart, not on longer time frames. But for scalping, right now it would be very interesting to go long. At least up to this area, it could give us a move. Up to the last zone at 64,500, maybe a bit more, and then aiming for, 63,500, a bit more, 63,600. Or I would aim for the 64,000 zone. These are pretty interesting positions for scalping or for intraday trading. Now, what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna set you the July challenge. You already know I do this on MEX Day. I started on July 1st with $500 and I make micro trades. Every day, as you can see on the screen, I enter and set a take profit of $15, now already $20, because the account is bigger now. And what I do is raffle off the amount over those $500 that I have on July 31st. Let's see how much the account is at right now. It's at $817, so that's great. The excess would now be $317, but there's still a lot of the month left. I'll raffle it among everyone who signs up at mexd.com and makes their first deposit. I'm Mikel Vasquez, and this is the Daily Bitcoin Analysis. I really appreciate you watching this video, and as I always say, this is not financial advice. I'm just sharing my experience with you after more than 15 years in professional trading. Stay tuned over the weekend. I won't post a video tomorrow because I'm going on vacation to Mundaka for a few days, and tomorrow I'm traveling, so there won't be a video. Then on Sunday, yes, Sunday and Monday, even though I'll be somewhere else, I'll keep posting videos. See ya, and stay tuned.